The Hamas-led health ministry in Gaza says 500 people have been killed in a blast at a hospital in Gaza. The facility was filled with wounded patients and people seeking shelter. Hamas, the Islamist militant group which governs Gaza, says an Israeli airstrike hit the hospital, but Israel says the blast came from a rocket misfired by another Palestinian militant group, Islamic Jihad.
Shocked and wounded. Survivors of the explosion at the al-Ahli hospital in Gaza City were transferred to the nearby Shifa hospital, where doctors are doing their best with limited space and resources to treat them. Hundreds of people died in the blast at al-Ahli, a hospital where many Palestinians had been seeking refuge in recent days from the continuous shelling by Israel. The terror organization Hamas blamed Israel for the attack, but the IDF is denying responsibility.
Intelligence from few sources that we have in our hands indicates that the Islamic Jihad is responsible for the failed rocket launch which hit the hospital in Gaza. I repeat, this is the responsibility of Islamic Jihad that killed innocents in the hospital in Gaza.
But the Palestinian militant group Islamic Jihad say they are not behind the explosion. Palestinians in the West Bank also blame Israel for the hospital blast. Anger boiled over into protests in Ramallah just hours later. Protests in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza took place in Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Tunisia.
We won't remain silent. This is a message for all Arab and non-Arab countries, Muslim or not. We will not be silent. We support the Palestinian cause and we're against what's happening in Gaza.
The hospital explosion also prompted Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to cancel his meeting in Jordan with US President Joe Biden. He says he needs to be in his homeland during this big ordeal.
Well, the blast came just hours before U.S. President Joe Biden is set to touch down in Israel as part of a diplomatic push to prevent the war with Hamas from spiraling into a wider conflict. In a statement, Biden said he had directed his national security team to gather information about the explosion. The president added, "I am outraged and deeply saddened by the explosion at the al-Ahli Arab hospital in Gaza and the terrible loss of life that resulted. The United States stands unequivocally for the protection of civilian life during conflict, and we mourn the patients, medical staff, and other innocents killed or wounded in this tragedy." But a planned summit in Jordan was canceled even before the U.S. president's jet left the tarmac. Jordan's King Abdullah II and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas pulled out after a blast at a hospital in Gaza killed hundreds of people, as we mentioned. The Amman summit was meant to bring together the leaders of the U.S., Egypt, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority. DW's senior international correspondent Fanny Fatshah is standing by in Tel Aviv. Fanny, as we heard there, the U.S. president has directed his national security team to investigate that hospital blast. How difficult is it going to be, Fanny, to establish exactly what happened there?
Well, the question is not only just how difficult it's going to be to establish any information here, but also once there are results, be it by the United States or by Israel, because Israel is claiming that they have intercepted, for example, communication ahead of this blast of Islamic Jihad that they blame for the attack, and that they also have surveillance footage that they are likely to publish. The question is, regardless what's being published, who is going to trust that information here in the region, and how that is going to influence how the conflict is going to evolve further on. I have to underline here something very important. Right after the attack in Gaza, for which Hamas militants and Israel blame each other for killing at least 300 people, but the number, according to Gaza health officials, goes up to 500 people. Before all of this, right after this, it was Egypt and the United Arab Emirates among the first countries to blame Israel for the attack. Now, one has to know that before October 7th, before the attack by Hamas militants here in Israel, these countries were pretty much the key players for Israel when it comes to friendly relationships with Israel. So how is that going to evolve if these two key players see Israel behind the attack? It's a really, really difficult situation. And obviously, it is pending the visit by US President Biden here in Tel Aviv, who is expected to meet Prime Minister Netanyahu in this hotel here right behind me later today.
Well, talking about Biden's visit, Fanny, how does all of this complicate his diplomatic efforts to stop this conflict from spiraling out of control?
A really good question, because prior to his visit, in fact, the goal for President Biden to come to Israel, but also obviously to meet the head of the Palestinian Authority, Mr. Abbas, King Abdullah of Jordan, the head of Egypt in Jordan, was a way trying to show that the US is still somehow under control of this situation. It will be able to somehow de-escalate the situation. But now it's really just unclear, especially after that summit has been cancelled. First of all, the head of the Palestinian Authority, Abbas, cancelling the meeting with Biden, and then the head of Jordan calling that meeting off, cancelling that summit completely. So now it's unclear just what message the US is going to send from Israel. As it seems now, as it appears now, the only person they will be able to talk to here is the head of Israel. Now, it may de-escalate in one way or the other, because we're hearing that the White House is saying that President Biden wants to ask some tough questions. Israel is regarded as a friend, but they will want to know more about what's going to happen in the coming days and weeks ahead. Also, it could serve as a breakthrough in some way if the US is able to achieve here some relief for the people in Gaza and have an impact on opening the Rafah border crossing with Egypt to help and make sure that aid gets into Gaza Strip.
Fanny, thank you so much. That was our senior international correspondent, Fanny Facha, in Tel Aviv.